This week, the renowned psychologist and Nobel laureate in economics, Daniel Kahneman, passed away at the age of 90. His work in behavioral economics and decision-making has been transformative in the world. Before his 2013 book, which is what he's best known for, well before that, Daniel was the psychologist who created what is still the current screening process for the IDF to determine which potential soldiers should go to what units. Because his work on decision-making ultimately started perhaps from his assignment when he was in the IDF so many years ago. His book, Thinking Fast and Slow, explores what he describes as the two systems by which we think, System 1 and System 2. I'm not going to get into them specifically right now, but suffice to say that he demonstrates how these systems interact and influence our decision-making processes in various aspects of life, from economics to finance to personal choices and biases. He emphasizes the importance of understanding these systems to improve decision-making, overcome cognitive bias, and to make better choices. That's his work. Parshat Tzav emphasizes well-being and happiness through the lens of spiritual fulfillment and adherence to God's commands. The text outlines rituals and korbanot, the offerings that God prescribes for the Israelites to follow, that emphasize the importance of maintaining holiness, purity, and obedience to God's will. By adhering to these practices, one can posit that the Torah is teaching us that the Israelites can attain a state of well-being and happiness, both individually and collectively, by aligning themselves with the divine purpose and experiencing a closeness. That's what the word korban means. It comes from the Hebrew word karov, a closeness to God. For example, in the sacrifices that we read this morning, we come across the korban todah, the offering of thanksgiving. It's one of the shleimim, or the well-being offerings. Shleimim, from shalom, meaning well-being, wholeness, fulfillment. Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch says that the shleimim is an expression that is given from a person who feels themselves as being shalem, as being whole, a condition of completeness, lacking nothing and in condition with it. He wishes, therefore, to get nearer to God. What's interesting about the Korban Todah, the Thanksgiving offering, is that for all the other Shleimim offerings, you can leave a little bit of the food left over, right? The notion of Korbanim is that you would bring them to God, you would sacrifice them, and then you would eat them. In all the other Shleimim offerings, except for Todah, you can have leftovers. When it comes to the Shleimim Todah, to the Thanksgiving offering, we read in verse 15, chapter 7, verse 15, Ubasar zevach todat shlamav, b'yom korbano yeyachel. And the offering of the Thanksgiving sacrifice of well-being shall be eaten on that day, the day in which it is offered. Lo yaniach mimenu ad boker. None of it should be set aside to morning. That's what makes it unique. When it comes to the Shleimim, you can't have any leftovers. Rabbi Abravanel, a 15th century Italian commentary, suggests that the Shleimim Todah, the Thanksgiving offering, is a public offering. When one feels content, one wants to celebrate. And so when you offer the Korban Todah, You're going to invite your friends, your relatives, your community. You're going to have a sudah. You're going to have a simcha. You're going to celebrate. And so therefore, you're bringing all these people into the experience, and you invite them to share it. And that's the reason why there's not going to be any leftovers, because all your friends are going to come and they're going to eat. Rabbi Shai Held, who we hope to bring here for our Scholar in Residence weekend, the weekend of Slichot, the week before Rosh Hashanah, Rabbi Shai Held brings notes that this offering is outward looking. He quotes sociologist Robert Emmons, who says that gratitude is a moral emotion in that it leads to behaviors intended to help others. Right? So when you're feeling shalem, when you're feeling content, when you're feeling whole, when you're feeling fulfilled, you want to share it. So when you invite your friends, your mishpacha, your community to come and participate with you, it's a behavior that therefore inspires you to help others. When one is the beneficiary of God's kindness, Shai continues, one is expected to bestow kindness oneself. Now, I think there's a complementary perspective that Daniel Kahneman's work provides with regard to the Parsha, with regard to this Korban Todah, this Thanksgiving offering, that comes out of his notions or his ideas of well-being and happiness that are articulated in his work in behavioral economics. Kahneman distinguishes between two types of well-being and happiness. Experiencing happiness in the moment, a hedonic well-being, and evaluating one's overall life satisfaction, a eudaimonic well-being. In the context of the Parsha, the rituals and offerings prescribed can be seen as contributing to both types of happiness. From a hedonic perspective, engaging in rituals and offerings may provide moments of joy and satisfaction and spiritual fulfillment as individuals participate in communal worship, experience a sense of well-being, and connect with God. These rituals, therefore, provide an immediate gratification and contribute to a sense of happiness, of shlemut, in the present moment. From a eudaimonic perspective, adherence to divine commandments and the pursuit of spiritual growth through rituals and offerings may ultimately lead to a deeper sense of meaning, purpose, and fulfillment in life. By aligning our actions with God's will and living according to the moral and ethical principles of God's will, of the Torah, we as individuals may experience a profound sense of well-being that transcends momentary pleasures and encompasses a broader evaluation of our lives. I just find it, I often wonder in these circumstances if people like Daniel Kahneman, who come from Jewish backgrounds, whether or not they're consciously thinking about the connection that can be found to the work that they're doing, in his case, well-being and happiness as it relates to behavior economics and the Torah. Or is it just that our Torah is so embedded in our subconsciousness that when we as Jews approach these problems and challenges, when we contribute to these larger ideas in the world, that there's something about our upbringing and our experience that leads us in these directions? Because I find this connection between Kahneman's work and the notion of the korbanot, especially the korban todah, in this week's Torah reading, fascinating, that even such a connection can be made. And I think the bottom, the nafkamina, at the end of it all, the point that I want to make, both in terms of thinking about Kahneman's contribution to the world of how we make our moral choices and our behaviors, that has all those different outcomes that I mentioned earlier. And the Parsha can be summed up in something that Rabbi Shai Held said in his comment on the Torah reading today. And that is that God's gifts are meant to flow through us and not merely to us. And if that's the case, then the way in which we make our choices, the way in which we behave, if we do that with a sense of God's presence and will flowing through us, what a better world we would be able to make. And I think also, Idan, it relates to what you said in remembering, I'm blanking on her name, Noam, in remembering her this morning, and that is every day do something good. Shabbat Shalom.